England certainly know how to divide their fan base. Coming into this tournament, I think every Englishman I was hearing from was saying anything but the final is going to be abject failure. Look at the squad, look at the talent, covering every position, basically two to a man. And it only took the opening game to only be a 1-0 victory against Serbia, who really never, I know it was a few shots that maybe Pickford had to dive for and stuff like that, but they were never really in this game. And all the talking points coming out of it, honestly, have got my head spinning. The inefficiency of Foden, the inefficiency of Trent, as well as Harry Kane's lack of application in this game, and Jude Bellingham being all things to all men. In the video today, we're going to be breaking down everything wrong with the England game, really, from what was on the pitch and what we're hearing on the timelines thereafter. Because I really do think that, I don't even know if I would say I'm neutral as much as, I'm not even neutral towards England. I would say I'm definitely going to be a little bit biased towards not wanting them to do well, for sure. But having watched this game, I just think that so many people are missing out on some really good positives that actually came out of this match for England, which we'll touch on as well at any point in the video. If you do laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this as we cover the Euros all the way through the summer, as well as all the transfer business that's still sprinkling, it's still happening throughout this summer as we prepare for, the 24-25 season. And yeah, let's just get stuck straight into it. Now, really, when it comes to the setup of this game from England especially, I don't think there was many pundits that got this one wrong. I think all the predicted 11s, expected shape, as well as the actual people on the pitch was pretty much bang on. I think it was a team that was highly forecasted, and that kind of tells you, some people are seeing training, some people are seeing what they're working on, and, they brought that into this game, certainly. And there's a lot of talking points from the team selection to the guys that stayed on the bench, as well as what we actually seen on the match. But one thing I would want to highlight right now before we do get into any of the critique or any of the analysis or anything like that, is I do think ultimately all the stuff we're going to talk about around Trent and around Foden is quite, all the stuff I'm seeing certainly anyway, is very much missing what England have tried to build here in their attack, in their midfield, because throughout this game, Declan Rice was very much anchored very centrally into the middle of the pitch, as was Bellingham. Now, Bellingham had the freedom of the pitch. He had the keys to the city to be able to go around and do everything. Tackle whoever he wanted, pass to whoever he wanted, get in the box when he's seen the opportunity, as well as, coming back and defending if required. And when you've got that kind of axis in the team of Bellingham and Rice, everything else is just kind of flowing here and there around it. And particularly in the first half, I was actually really excited by Trent Alexander's performance in this midfield position. Although he's definitely not your stereotypical midfielder in the error he made, coming back, he's definitely not a guy you want facing his own goal. I think we can all kind of agree on that. Although I do think the defensive inefficiencies that he has are a bit overstated. But he was really, really free in midfield to pick up different pockets, because, the Serbia, number one, right, are a good team. They're like a proper B, C list international setup. They've always got a couple of guys operating around the elite end of the game, and they're always, as we've seen over recent years, physically very imposing. So having a midfield that's going to be well drilled and, in your face throughout the whole game, the amount of space he was actually able to sneak into, to find in the game, and a lot of the times the passing he was making and the space he was able to create for particularly Saka, I do feel, on this side of the pitch here, because they were over here together quite often. We did see Trent pop up in some different areas of the pitch as well, but I really do feel that the freedom this gave him on this side of the Rice-Bellingham axis was very well mirrored in a slightly more offensive position from Foden, and the kind of positions he was able to take up and really not be found, as we'll look at in the video, to be a little bit closer to Kane and to be that little bit of support, so that if Kane did have two defenders in and around him, there was always somebody having to think about where Foden was going to be running to or looking to play with. So I do, the way I seen this game right from the beginning was Bellingham and Rice were very much the anchors, the axis across the middle of the team, and then we had Foden with this kind of freedom on the left side of the axis, being a bit closer to Kane where possible, and Trent having that freedom on the right hand side as well, but maybe trying to be a little bit closer to Rice. And to try this out for the very first time against a team like Serbia, I think number one is quite brave in the opening game of a tournament, especially when you see the amount of easier options that there is in the team. It's not like England are stuck for choice here. And I do feel that although there was some kinks in this, which is all the negatives that everyone's pointing out about it, I do feel we're able to do what they did against Serbia with this kind of setup does bode pretty well for how England could do in this tournament with the flexibility that this really gives them. Because this isn't plan A for England. I think anyone who watches England, probably more than I do certainly, will be able to tell you that this isn't as textbook as we've seen from them. The emergence of Bellingham, no Maddison in this team as well, who I think a lot of people had as being a best 11 England player over qualifying and such. This is quite a new look England. It's definitely not plan A, just to kind of say that again. And really in the first half when we were, watching Serbia trying to get into this game, me obviously still having the Munich massacre of Scotland still firmly in the memory. England really, really looked like Germany to me in the opening 10-15 minutes of this game. With Rice playing in the kind of Andrish role, we had the centre-backs just wanting to defend. We've seen quite often that all the balls were coming down the right-hand side but into Stones, and Walker would get out into this kind of area here because he has the power of teleportation to support Saka and really give Kostic a real run for his money and really put Pavlovic under the cosh, under the microscope in the opening period. But with Trippier kind of tucking in and with Foden tucking in, this is kind of where it differed from Germany in the sense that there was no mirror image of the width. All the width for England was on the right hand side. But between Rice, Guy, Stones, this was very much like Andrić, Kroos and Rudiger for me. Yeah, Andrić, Ta, Rudiger. And then Trent was trying to do a little bit of the Kroos. This is kind of what we've seen earlier in the game when he was in this little pocket of the pitch here, coming off the centre-backs, coming off that kind of anchor position that we had here. Because what Germany were really good at doing was giving themselves a defensive kind of base, a platform of roles and responsibilities for their team, and then allowing all the attacking players to do their thing, to get into the spaces they want, to make the passes that are available, to cut the opposition open, and if any chances come, do their best to be in the best positions to take them. And I think we did see a bit of that when it came to Bellingham's goal in the first 10 minutes or whatever it was, with how well that was worked. But where the game plan kind of dropped down against Serbia is that they didn't have those clear multiple options available. So when England, anytime they were getting on the ball, everything was very, very right-hand side. Saka and Trent would be nice and high. Walker, I say, was using his powers of teleportation to get all over the pitch, and we would see Foden in nice and tight, or maybe even trying to get crowded in this area here, like we see for the goal when Bellingham gets the score and Foden's over on this side of the pitch with Trent before the ball comes down the right for Bellingham to sneak in and be, I know he challenges the guy to win the header to score the goal, but he's not marked coming into the box. He's basically stood off the play as they've retreated, and then he's timed his run to perfection to force the header in, which was great. But when you do this so deliberately, and especially with Trippier, now Trippier did end up, again for the goal, he was even in this kind of zone here, but Trippier isn't a left-footed left-back, and as much as left-footed centre-backs can be a little bit overplayed in modern football, like your wide players need to have that easy delivery if they're on the front foot running. And because Trippier is naturally always going to be a little bit tighter, ended up being quite close to Gay in a lot of opportunities as well when England were building into possession. So they're kind of occupying the same space is kind of the main point of highlighting that. But in any case, any time England were getting on the ball, everything was right-hand side, right-hand side, right-hand side. And for me, this is why England didn't score any more goals in this game. Because after 10-15 minutes, if not quicker, you could, Serbia, me, most people watching can see that England do not want to do anything down the left unless absolutely necessary. And that was really dictated and controlled predominantly by Declan Rice and John Stones, because every time these guys were getting on the ball in safe possession to progress the ball further up the pitch, if they were receiving it from the left or the right or whatever, it wouldn't matter. Almost every time without fail, they were dogmatically instructed, you have to say, because they did it so regimentally throughout the game, to force everything down the right-hand side, down everything down Serbia's left-hand side. And after like a couple of opportunities of that happening where there is space on the left, maybe something could have happened. Maybe sometimes Foden did hold a bit of width and he just would, it's just not even in the question that you're going to find him from open play. The objective is to get him into the back post and arriving into the box late. In that instance, it just makes it way easier for Serbia to get a bit tighter, to cover their zones at the pitch that they want to, and just crowd it out with their physical kind of presence and whatnot. And it just then makes for a much harder wall to break down if the opposition know where you're going to be going every single time, especially when we're talking about a full side of the pitch. It just means then you can double up, leave a man over extra. If you do see Trent roaming, then you know that it's going to be going back over there in a minute, and you can maybe just guard a passing lane as well as maybe even just get shirt tight to him. And this for me is where the criticism does become, right? Because if you're going to set up in this way where you've got a ball playing centre backs that you're always going to give the ball to, Guy who is like the sweeper out of the two of them, he's got good pace, won a lot of good duels and such, with Rice in front of them as being the deep line playmaker, with then Trippier kind of coming in tight, maybe holding a wee bit of width depending on the position of the strikers for Serbia. You need to give them as many things to think about as possible. Are they going to start playing the ball down the left or the right? And even regardless of the man mountains that they've got in here, when do they play it through the middle? Because this is a big feature of, especially if you look at Germany's second goal against Scotland, like the balls through the middle are the most penetrating, are the most dangerous, and you have, like England, you guys have players that should be able to unlock those doors, as it were. That's the reason that Trent's in the team, for example, in midfield. But when you've got Saka holding the width on one side, that's great, but without having Foden doing the same, you then get into a situation, and whenever I see this in a football match, I always think about the movie 300 when they're setting up, for the Persians invading, and we'll get into the corridor, where their numbers will count for nothing. And when everything's on one side of the pitch, trying to overload isn't going to happen, and that really does just play into Serbia's hands even more. So if this is the idea, to have Foden and to have Trent off this kind of centre axis, having one wide player in Saka kind of defeats the purpose of it, because we're still expecting Walker to get up here and do these pieces throughout the match. I know he didn't do it the whole game, as well as Trent's natural ability to, just find himself in these zones of the pitch here. You're asking Foden to come in and get close to Kane and interlink with other midfielders and drop into different pockets or whatever. Bellingham has that freedom, but it's not quite the same freedom, because we see him dropping into these kind of areas here, which, by the way, Foden did as well, to great effect at different moments of this match without being found. I do think that Foden had a lot more license to go kind of anywhere, and we did see him trying to get the ball off of Pickford in the defence down here. And again, this kind of further highlighted the dogmatic, no, get the ball out wide, give it to Walker, give it to Trent, try and play Saka. Because even when Foden was coming into this kind of zone here, it was just, people weren't even taking him on. So if you're going to be using Foden, and I think England would be mad not to, Saka on the right isn't the play for me. This is where you need to see Cole Palmer come into the team. And this is, again, to go back to what I'm kind of seeing in terms of parallels in this tournament, this kind of German base of, world-class kind of base midfielders and building out into a world-class attack. They were able to do it with such great effect with the likes of Gundogan in the Bellingham role, which I think there was a good kind of doppelganger in this match, certainly. But then with Wirtz and Musiala, these guys have just got absolute freedom of the pitch to go left to right, to double up on one side with each other, go further and beyond on the striker as well. And I do think that that's the way to attack like this back three, if you're going to be playing with a Foden and a Kane, and what we're trying to do with Trent here as well in that kind of Toni Kroos position. Because if you're going to be trying to buy this guy pockets of space to get on the ball, then you need as many different dynamic runs happening as possible to, really express his full passing array, as it were. But Palmer didn't even get a minute in this match, and I do think that number one, that's probably going to be because this is probably going to be the only time you see Jared Bowen in the group stages, to be honest with you. I think the way Southgate does set England up and does prepare for tournament football, it definitely does sketch out the group stage to get, I would probably say, everyone in the squad an appearance or some minutes. And then when he gets into the knockouts, he can be a wee bit cleaner of conscience that everyone has had a worthwhile contribution, and he can pick the best players for the best matches. But there is more than one way to skin the cat, which is why I do think that, there was a lot of positives here, but I do think that England just were very much painting the game by numbers. Everything down the right. If Walker makes a run, play him. If Saka's out there, go and get him. And the best example of this is probably the opportunity that Walker got, where he did run the full length of the pitch to get in the box and just about squeeze across a way that kind of went to no one. Because as we see, this move starts off with Serbia and England kind of fighting with some duels in the middle of the pitch, and then it's a stray pass from, I think it's Vlahovic, and it's intercepted by Trent. And the interception is a lovely kind of pass. It just puts Saka into the picture here. Now, Saka is the best positioned forward on the pitch by a mile. So even this one-touch interception, no-look situation that Trent's played here is the perfect pass to make. Now, for me, when you see this picture unfolding, we've got Kane on the back three. Walker is still in a right-back position. He is on the front foot. And as we can see, Foden is now gliding from a deeper position, and he's going to look to support Saka. Within 3 seconds, Kyle Walker has managed to teleport up the pitch to be shoulder to shoulder with Saka. And a 2v1 here versus Pavlovic is, a good situation to be in on the counter-attack. And I definitely get the instructions in the theory of send the ball down wide for Walker against Pavlovic because he'll take him. And if Saka can hold his run up, then he'll end up in a good position as well. But if you look at how close Pavlovic has stayed to Saka and Walker, and he knows what's going to happen here. Kane's still got a 2 versus 1. For me, how Saka isn't playing this ball into the left for Phil Foden, who then has the entire picture in front of him. The centre of the pitch is where we want the most dangerous players, and is where we want to cut the opposition open for when we're going to be doing a key transition, a key counter-attack like this. Because putting Phil Foden on the ball here opens up Harry Kane. still leaves Kyle Walker on for an opportunity because Pavlovic now has got a third person to look at. As soon as that ball is going to go to him, Pavlovic is going to have to change his body shape and then try and cover back in to where his other centre-backs are in case the ball goes to Kane or Foden keeps running in that kind of vicinity of where he's at, which is going to buy all the space and time that Walker and even Saka could ask for. And I think with Cole Palmer, I think this ball probably comes to Foden. But even with Saka, I love Saka, I think he's a great player. But even with Saka, if he played this ball into Foden here, for me, this is going to end up being a goal. And as you can see here, right as he passes the ball, like imagine the ball's getting into the path of Phil Foden here. Pavlovic is then going to be not running like that towards Walker, but Walker's still going to keep up with that run. And I think then the whole thing would have just worked a little bit better and we would have seen it go England 2, Serbia 0. Even here, a couple of seconds later, as Walker does get to the box, again, Foden is in the perfect position to be wrapping his foot around this Florian Wirtz style, Musiala style, whatever you want to think of it as, and make it 2-0. And again, Walker, I think on hindsight, he probably knows he's taken a touch or two too many. Maybe should have released the ball a little bit earlier because by the time you get to here, space, everything is gone, the whole counter-attack benefit. You still have cutbacks at the edge of the box. Trent and Saka have held their runs up well. But again, just by this point, it's too late and it kind of fizzles out. But I think if that, there's a few things like that happened in the match. And I think if that one, for example, had panned out a little bit differently, then a lot of the criticism for Foden and the kind of shape and everything we've seen from England would have been totally different, to be honest with you, because then he's credited with a very valuable contribution in the match. So there is more than one way to skin the cat on this one. But I do think the substitutions in this game really do kind of let you into the thinking of what's going on and really what you see throughout the squad. The first substitution we see is Trent Alexander-Arnold off for Conor Gallagher. Is a sign of probably what is closer to Gareth Southgate's plan A for me, because having Trent in this kind of deep lying free role playmaker midfielder thing that was going on is great if Serbia or the opposition are going to behave the way that Serbia have, and it allows you to try it out. And for 60-70 minutes I think it did kind of well enough. But like I said before, you really don't want this guy facing his own goal and travelling transition, going forward and attack, breaking into space. I think he is probably one of England's best options in this role throughout the squad. But what you get from Conor Gallagher is much more the stereotypical, will do by the book what you want in this kind of double pivot here with Rice. Because although Rice is coming out of this game with flying pass marks and a lot of good kind of plaudits or whatever, I really do feel that there was a real lack of his, I don't know if I want to say attacking, but forward contribution necessarily. But I do feel that when Gallagher came on, he didn't become super defensive and be like the yin to the Trent yang, as it were. You did still see Gallagher get into some good positions and get a bit further forward, but you do trust him to not only play the forward pass but then go a bit on and beyond and make something happen. And if we're keeping Saka on still at this point in the match and he's holding the width, it does then add into a little bit more of this, have that defensive platform with the right guys in the right positions, and then let the good players, let the best players in the team go on and affect the game as best they can. And I do feel that Gallagher's position here, just in general throughout his appearance off the bench, we started to see Kane come to life a little bit more. It was a bit easier for Kane to stay a bit higher onto the back line because he was, and I know sometimes that even when Gallagher was on, he was maybe coming a bit deeper to play with the ball and whatever. But in the first half, when it was Trent, we didn't quite see the same from Kane in this game. It did feel like it took a lot more work to get the ball anywhere near him. Whereas with Gallagher came on, and then laterally Bowen, it did just feel that Kane became a bit more of a focal point, came into the game a little bit more, and his goal might have came on the game if it lasted another couple of minutes. And Bellingham for Mainu right at the end was quite interesting as well, because he, again, I would have thought would have been rather deep, but he was actually rather high when he came on into the game. And I think, again, if we've seen Mainu, Rice and Gallagher starting, it would be very feasible to imagine that we see both these guys getting into the face of oppositions as well as, playing in defensively. So that's something that might evolve throughout the tournament. But again, like when I seen that, you can see quite clearly that Gareth Southgate has like a doppelganger kind of situation for everyone. Bowen is maybe a bit more defensive than Saka, but he offers you that same kind of energy and invention on the right-hand side, and I know he's not everyone's cup of tea. But the players that didn't feature in this match that are causing a lot of conversation as well, Cole Palmer, who we've already kind of referenced, and Anthony Gordon, I think would have had a huge impact on this match. But I think clearly, the manager wasn't, up for using them in this game. And I think because Foden got 90 minutes and we've seen the kind of way that he played throughout the game, I wouldn't be totally surprised in the next match if we've seen Foden and Saka dropped for, I say dropped kind of loosely, for Gordon and for Palmer, and we see a kind of a mirror image effect of what we've seen on this game here. And I think it will work out much for the better. I don't know if Gallagher will start over Trent necessarily, but when you are going to try and play this kind of system here, if you're not going to have Foden and Palmer both coming in and doing the Musiala and Wirtz kind of thing, for me it's a bit redundant having Saka on the right if you're still going to be employing Walker to do all this kind of running on this side of the pitch here. Gallagher will do that. It was Trent in this game as well. Because if this is the game you're going to play, trying to get Trent into the cruise position, allow Foden that kind of freedom to roam around and attack, as well as Bellingham, who's got the freedom to roam around and defend and attack and all the rest of it, then Gordon is going to hold that width for you the way you want on the left-hand side. There's not really a left-back that's going to go over him. I don't see Shaw. I think Trippier is the best shout for left back here, but I don't think we're going to see an overlapping bombing left back. So if he is going to be a bit more tucked in, that does give you the license to leave one of these forward players out here holding the width on this side of the pitch. If you're going to have Walker being that threat, where even if he isn't high and wide, the opposition is still always going to be considering him because he can travel across the pitch so quickly like he does. So I think Gordon not starting this game is maybe something Southgate will be taking out of the match for food for thought. And I would not be surprised one bit to see Gordon start the next match. Even if it did mean that Foden retained his place, I could see him being dropped for Palmer. But then we'll see this kind of much closer to German kind of setup that works so well against Scotland and will probably serve them well throughout the tournament. Because if you look at this with Trippier and Trent Alexander-Arnold in this position here when you're on the ball, with Rice anchoring in, this is going to be so difficult to defend against, with Kane on the defenders beating Harry Kane, and then Phil Foden and Bellingham roaming around this channel, this kind of slice of the pitch that they're going to have the opportunities to move around in. So I do feel that England laid a very good foundation in this game for a style of play if they're going to try and build on it throughout the group stages and throughout the tournament. But at the very least, what they've exercised here is a good plan B or plan C, depending on what you and Gareth Southgate actually thinks the best starting 11 is, and ultimately what plan A is in terms of tactics and whatever. So I don't think we've seen plan A from England. I think we've seen a lot of green shoots from them in terms of how they could develop throughout the tournament, because this is the level of football that they'll have to play at, not in terms of what we've seen against Serbia, but this kind of enigma that they're trying to crack to now if they are going to go on and try and win it. Playing ball basic, 4-2-3-1 where everyone's dead flat and it's just do your job and do everything textbook, do the basics really, really well. You are going to get not as much out of Phil Foden, and you're probably not going to get that much out of Harry Kane like we've seen in this match here. Getting a lot out of the likes of Bellingham and whoever else is in the engine room, it's always kind of a given in this kind of shape. But when you're going to try and win the tournament and you've got elite world-class players, you do need to build this proper system where you've got everything kind of built the way to really ask the opposition the most amount of questions you possibly can, while still highlighting all the key attributes that the team has itself. And I do think that this is the way that we're kind of set up against Serbia. It's just far too one-sided. I think you definitely need a Gordon, or you could play Saka on the left, I'm sure, to really give it that supreme kind of balance. Because like I said a second ago, Trippier, Trent, Rice in the centre of the engine room here with two defenders behind them to cover for counter-attack is an amazing world-class kind of platform for someone like Gordon to be coming off the left and driving at people, and with Bellingham and Foden doing their thing, with Walker holding width, or even just occupying the space in everyone's mind of Walker could just appear down the right-hand side. So I do think that England are actually quite close to cracking a serious tactical development here, the philosophical footballing code, as it were. I really hope they don't do it, but I really do hope in the next game we see probably the same back four, but rather than Trent, he's probably going to start Mainu or Gallagher. And I've got a wee feeling between Foden and Gordon that they two could be swapped for Foden and Saka for Palmer and Gordon, and we see a kind of a reverse of what we got in this game. And even if this happened, because Palmer and Foden are very similar in terms of play style, but getting that mirror width on the go here, I think will make England look markedly better. Now, Denmark are probably the hardest team in the group, so I do think that whatever does come out from this England team, with maybe this exception, because this would just be a rotation, a tactical kind of group stage play, like I've already mentioned what I think about Southgate's group stage tactics for it or whatever. But if we didn't see any rotation or whatever, and we've seen basically the same attacking department, I would say that whatever this team does become will be probably plan A, will be the strongest lineup in Gareth Southgate's mind as they prepare for going through the group stages. We'll see how they get on against Denmark. I think only scoring one goal against Serbia has maybe deflated some people around England or whatever, but England never really smash, do they, in the group? They always qualify. They'll get the 9 points. Maybe if there is a Diddy team, they can spank them 4 or 5 or whatever, but that isn't Serbia, and that's not Denmark, so I'm not expecting this to be a high-scoring affair. It could be action-packed end-to-end, and England definitely have the talent to go on and do that. But it'll be interesting to see how they kind of shape up, what problems they try and solve from match day one. What problems do you think there is? Is there anything in the video that I've not touched on today that you think was glaringly obvious, or a big problem, or a big positive from the game from an England perspective, or otherwise, if you're a neutral or an anyone but England, or you could be whatever you're watching the video for. Let me know in the comment section down below. On screen there now is some other stuff that I've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and I will catch you on the next one.